Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us again. We love to see all of our visitors coming to the webinars that we've been having. This webinar is Accessible Design to Maximize Marketing Reach, and it's presented by Mike Yanelli and Kim Casey. We'll talk about them in a minute. I just want to talk a little bit about ISBM while everybody else gets settled and gets into here. So go ahead, get to the next slide. We are ISBM. Thanks for joining us. We were founded in 1982 by a collection of academics as well as a few B2B companies who recognized that they really didn't have a focus in the academic world on research and advancing the knowledge of B2B marketing. Today, we're nearly 40 member firms and we continue there. Okay, thanks. I'll keep moving, Lori, that's great. So here's Mike Yanelli and Kim Casey. They're our presenters today, and there's my lovely picture that I've done. We'll go to the next one. Okay, so how are we gonna take your questions? We would please encourage you, because as you would join us, you'll be on mute. We encourage you to click on the Q&A tab and ask a question. So you'll click on that tab and type your question in. I will be monitoring that during the presentation. And unless it's clear that we should interrupt our presenters, we're gonna let them continue presenting. They've got a lot of really great stuff to show. And I'll forward those questions and ask them later at the end of the webinar. They're going to be moving back and forth between screens, between a presentation screen and actual live website. And that's just enough to handle. So we're just going to make sure our questions get logged. And then again, unless I need to interrupt them, we'll let them continue. But please put your questions in as you think of them. Next slide. Okay, what happens after? Because we always get this question. We record these, and this one is currently being recorded. And if you are a member of ISBM, you'll be able to get it anytime by logging into B2B Pulse with your login credentials. If you're not a member of ISBM, well, we sure hope you would think about it. But if you're not, you can have access to this for 30 days, and they'll be on the website where you logged in to get to register for this at isbm.com. So you can get it there as well. Next slide. And here's a thank you from all of us. So I'm Lynn Yanyo. Rand Mendez is our executive director and works with membership. Scott and Becky help us with a variety of things, including our education programs. Stefan is now director of the academic portion of ISBM. Lori actually does all the work. Ralph Alieva and Gary Lillian are historical memories of all things. And I encourage you to join us if you're a member for our members meeting, which is coming up in about 4 weeks. Ralph is going to be presenting a recorded presentation of the historical perspective of our just lost the word. Okay. And thank you. There you go. That'll help me very much. Here's all of our fellows. We have over 30 fellows. So one of the benefits of being part of ISBM is that we know and have with us as fellows all of the folks who know everything about B2B marketing and are doing research in that world. You can have access to them by being part of us. And the next slide is that here's our member firms that we also get to have peer conversations between each other. And so you can join our member firms in this grouping. And the next slide is where I'm going to our members meeting. So our next webinar is next week, faster revenue growth by these new digital tools. You'll want to take a look at that. October 13 and 14 is what I was referring to earlier, where Ralph is going to be giving us the history of frameworks. And frameworks are these heuristic tools or things that we've developed that help us organize our thoughts and get better at things. They're wonderful tools, and we have many of them in B2B marketing, more than we thought when we started this conversation. So Ralph is going to give us a historical rundown of everything that we've done, and you'll get that ahead of the meeting. And then at this meeting, you'll meet 6 new frameworks that you really need to know and you'll want to be part of. So do sign up. The other features that we're doing for that members meeting, which is again virtual, I'm sorry, we can't physically get together yet. I wish we could. We're going to have coffee together. So if you'll share your shipping address where you'd like your coffee cup and your coffee and tea sent, we hope that you'll join us for a couple of coffee breaks with us. And we're also going to have a chocolate tasting. So you'll want to get that sample as well so that you can join us for the afternoon chocolate tasting as well. On October 28th, we'll have our next meeting of the Marketing Excellence Roundtable. And if you don't know what those are, then you'll want to join us for frameworks and learn more, or just send us an email and we'll get you up to speed. We have a jam session on November 3rd about virtual leadership and virtual collaboration. A woman who has been teaching this for a decade about how to build trust without physically being in the same room where has she been for 18 months, but we're going to want her here. And then November 4th, you're going to love this webinar too. It's 5 blanks of the door opening success. How do you get people to take your call? And this woman is amazing at it. So you'll want to join that as well. So all that's at isbm.com. Feel free to sign up there. And next slide. Okay, if you want to follow up from this, you're going to be able to talk to Abeler directly, and they're going to leave their stuff up, but grab this information or the deck afterward for Mike and Kim. As always, you can reach me, Rand or Lynn or Lori at our email addresses. We appreciate that. And I think that's my last note, Lori, right? So we're going to be passing this over to the team from Abeler, and let's go. Kim?
I'm on it.
All right.
Go. Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Casey, and I'm joined by Mike Iannelli. I will be manning the, let's see. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. It's not showing the highlights. So now I'm going to presentation mode. Okay, so now you can see the whole thing. Okay, great. So we will be presenting today on accessible design to maximize marketing reach. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that accessibility and marketing kind of go hand in hand. As I said before, I'm Kim Casey, the Director of Accessibility. I've been doing accessibility work for over 20 years now. I started with a company that was trying to make maps accessible for the blind. So it's been a very interesting, very fun journey for me. And now I'm with Abeler. And I'm joined by Mike Iannelli.
Hello, my name is Mike Iannelli. Yes, and Kim, thanks. I can jump in here. I'm co-founder and CRO of Abeler. Abeler has been, well, we were born from an organization called LCI, which is the largest employer of the blind in the United States, located here in Durham. We employ about almost 600 folks in Durham location and some other locations across the country. We're partnered with the U.S. military, and we have actually created, LCI has created commissary stores across the bases in the country that employs folks with disabilities as well. So the DNA of Abeler is very strong in terms of accessibility and inclusion. We're going to take the first couple of slides just quickly to kind of tell you about what Abeler does, so you're kind of aware of it, have a couple polls, and then we're going to dive deeply into ISBM. We had the pleasure of working with Lynn and working through the website to give you a real example of what accessibility looks like. There's often some misconceptions about compliance versus accessibility, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So about Abeler, there's 3 sort of core pillars, and I know the word pillars is everyone's favorite, but this is really what drives our organization. We are mission driven. And we've really sort of simplified it down to 3 pieces: eliminating the digital divide, which is creating these accessibility experiences, these experiences, making sure that all digital content, whether it's applications or websites, even PDFs, PowerPoint presentations, are fully accessible for all people, regardless of ability or impairment. Changing the mindsets of people and organizations. We have a training, a very comprehensive training in partnership with an organization called the Diversity Movement, where we have a 5-module disability inclusion training for inclusive language, beyond the checkbox, everything regarding unconscious bias, and really the consulting opportunity to help organizations become more inclusive. And I know right now that's sort of the big buzz, but inclusivity is really not something new. It's just something we haven't practiced as a society that often. And so now we have this amazing opportunity to ensure that all people of all backgrounds and abilities can access the same content. So we help organizations create more inclusive environments, and we also help individuals through creating pathways for employment, get prepared for the workforce with workforce readiness and development programs. So if you take the last 2 and you combine those, we help organizations get prepared, and we help folks with disabilities get prepared, and we bring those 2 individuals together to ensure that there's more employment opportunities for folks for the future of our technology workforce. Kim, if you wouldn't mind, yeah, perfect. So the Abeler advantage, we always say, and again, this is not by any means a sales opportunity. We just want to give you a little bit of insight into who we are. We employ 70% of our team has a disability, whether it's macular degeneration, cataracts, You name it. We have all different. We even have cognitive impairments and auditory impairments on our team. The reason why we do that, one is we care about folks, and we train these folks to become ready for the workforce. But at the same time, we couldn't necessarily do our job as well as we should if we don't actually have people that use this technology natively. And when I mean technology, I mean assisted technology in terms of screen readers. And so it's very difficult for an organization to say that they can make everyone accessible and their content accessible, but if they don't do usability testing with actual real humans, then they really don't have a really complete answer or complete picture of what the challenges are. And so our analysts are certified. They're certified through WCAG, which is the World Accessibility Content Guidelines. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. And they have impairments, and they're brilliant. And so we have an absolute blessing to work with the team that we have, impairment or not. And we're really happy to be here. Kim, can you hit the next slide, please? So this is poll time, and I'll tell you in advance, this is the first time I'm doing polls, but I love these. And so we're gonna open this up, and the first poll is how many people across the globe do y'all believe have a disability?
And just to make sure we're being accessible here, the options are 1 billion, 250 million, 537 million, or 2.3 billion.
Thank you, Kim.
Lori, we'll let you make the call. I can't see oh, there it is.
Ah,
Looks like we have it. Yep.
very nice, very nice. Okay, so Kim, I guess we can close and skip. So if you could go to the next slide as well. So that's correct. Yeah, there's 1 billion. Okay, so you all were very close. I was very impressed. Some people, believe it or not, vote significantly lower. The beauty of that, right, is that if you're on the call and you are in a growth opportunity, they represent the actual community of folks with disabilities represents almost $8 trillion in buying power. But in some crazy fashion, they're still excluded in the inclusive environment. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but over 90% of US websites are not compliant or accessible. So if you take out and you think about almost 10 million people in the United States have a visual impairment, but 90% of the content they can't even access. And if you think about that for a minute, it's just not right. Excellent, Kim. Next slide, please. So the three major areas that we find are very important, and we don't like to lead with this one, but it is becoming more prominent every day. Lawsuits related to the ADA are popping up significantly. Most recently, if y'all are Jelly Bean fans, and this is challenging for me because I always like to make folks laugh, but I'm actually laughing at myself. But if you can imagine, the Jelly Bean company is under lawsuit right now. An individual with partial impairment is trying to buy a product online and could not. And sadly, this happens almost 90% of the times for folks. They get dropped off into the abyss, and they get lost, and they get frustrated, and they get upset, and they can't make a decision what to do. So litigation now is becoming big. Attorneys out there are identifying this, and they're creating an opportunity to create lawsuits. If you are not, it is not a requirement per se or a law per se, but it is a highly recommended requirement, but they have not historically hammered down on this, and it's becoming more prominent every day. So with working in an accessible environment, making sure your content is accessible, if you are an e-commerce company or any sort of conversion online in EDU, education is big. If individuals cannot inquire, cannot purchase, cannot apply, you are putting yourself at risk, significant risk. Number two, Kim, please. It is about growth. So regarding the mitigation piece, yes, it is an unfortunate thing in this business, but it's something that you all need to be aware of because it's growing. The two areas though we really like to focus on is growth, right? So we just talked about $1 trillion of opportunity, right? If 10 million people in the United States have an impairment and they're being excluded, think about the amount of opportunity you have to be an inclusive organization and elevate your brand ultimately to be available for all people, regardless of ability. So we believe, and we've seen statistically with our clients, conversion rates will jump upwards of 2 to 3% if done correctly in conversion. And if you partner this with a proactive PR or awareness generating campaign that supports inclusivity, supports accessibility, it is statistically known that customers or prospects are more likely to purchase or want to work with organizations that are accessible and inclusive. I was testing you, Kim, to see if you were completing my thoughts. You were close.
I wanted to, but I wasn't going to jump the gun.
We worked very closely together, but I wasn't sure. Okay, this is good. The third, brand equity and consistency. So again, this frankly is the reason why we're here. This is the reason why we're here. And again, it's all about being inclusive. We all have someone in our lives that may not have the same ability that we do, that may be from a different community. And ultimately, it is very discouraging when you speak with folks and talk with folks that are impacted by this. A lot of our analysts, believe it or not, will go try to shop and cannot shop. And some of our clients today were brought on to us by that exact experience, not being able to purchase. One of the other areas that is so important right now, especially when you think about what has happened in our world with COVID specifically, the internet usage is drastically increased. Day-to-day activity online is that of Cyber Monday. And so everything that we're dealing with, and as we continue to evolve, the work from home policies are stronger than ever. And what you're finding today is education is a major situational issue. Folks looking to get an education online today are unable to. Most of the platforms in education, most, not all, most are either not compliant or not fully accessible. So individuals with impairments are incapable of taking or unable of taking online courses. And so when you think about that as an opportunity to be inclusive, if individuals can't participate and inquire or apply or enroll or take courses online, it's problematic and it's not optimal for folks, especially when you're thinking about growth, individual growth. Thanks, Kim. So we have another poll, I believe, coming up, and we'll try to pick up the pace so we can get to some questions. So what percentage of ads include people with disabilities? I will read this off, Kim. So 2.2%, 10.9%, 34.5%, or 52%.
I think while we're waiting to have people chime in, I think when you were talking about brand equity, it's really about building a good foundation. And when you think about accessibility at the start, and what we'll show in a little bit later on is how we were able to increase accessibility on the ISBM website and also make sure everything was functioning for everybody. So really having the consistent message brand wide is something that really is a benefit to anyone who goes through accessibility process.
That's right. Good point, Kim. Thank you.
I love how nobody's answering 52. Is that everybody?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
So the answer to this is 2.2%. And now we know that this is changing every day, but unfortunately, this is not typical. Now, from an inclusive environment perspective, Kim, you talked about consistency and openness. Advertising agencies are starting to realize this and starting to actually include all folks. The beauty is hopefully of the day of the supermodel fashion magazines and the way we're supposed to live is hopefully being eliminated and eradicated, and we're in a more inclusive environment for accessibility and acceptance for all people, regardless of how they appear. And so this is an area that we'll continue to see improvement, but it's definitely shocking. Can we hit second, please?
I'm sorry.
Can you hit the other? I just said second, but either way, the next would be perfect. So we've been talking a little bit about accessibility today. Accessibility, so I'll talk to you a little bit. Compliance is great. So the ADA Americans with Disabilities Act was created many, many years ago, and it was created in an environment where the internet didn't even exist. It was updated to include some new digital foundations many years ago, but it's ultimately still not good enough. And oftentimes when we speak with folks, it's about, we call it table stakes, right? So even if you're compliant per se, it still does not ensure that you're accessible or usable. So accessibility is making websites, applications, platforms, everything usable for people with disabilities. So we work with Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is what we talked about was WCAG. And our form is 2.1 AA is the high, well, it's not the highest, but it's the one that we believe is the most beneficial and strongest. And this was developed by a working group. And it really is sort of the single standard that we use and that most people use. ADA is very important, but ADA was really created on the foundation of physical, not digital. And so WCAG makes it digital, excuse me, digital. And so it does make sure that everything in most organizations, if you're talking to organizations or if you're thinking about taking a proactive step here, it's very important that you ensure that WCAG is part of that conversation. Okay, next slide, please. So how is it measured? There's 4 sort of areas that it's measured in. Perceivable, users are able to identify the content and interface with elements. The operable side is using controls. So navigation, folks with visual impairments do not use the mouse. And so they have to be functional with navigation and shortcuts. There's also sniff and puff technologies for folks that are paraplegic that they need to be able to navigate as well. So when we do the work, we test all these out to ensure that all people, again, with disabilities, not just visually impaired, have the ability to navigate. So that is the operable. Understandable, presentation design follow and predictable pattern that users can comprehend the content. That goes across, frankly, all, regardless, but it has to be understandable. And from a design perspective, it needs to be robust and be leveraged across all technologies, as in responsive technologies, platforms, web interfaces, IPs, things like that as well, ISPs. So that's the way we look at it. So we use the POUR principles as a guide to achieve our standard. Kim, anything else you want to add into that? I know that you live and breathe the testing every day. Is there anything else you think is necessary to add in?
No, it's great. I'm usually doing this slide, so hear somebody else do it. It's great.
Oh, well,
you did a fabulous job.
I'm trying,
You're a lot less wordy than I am, so I think we've saved our audience quite a few minutes. Yeah. I'm
trying to be respectful of time so we can get to the findings for ISBN, which I think is really cool to see. So we'll skip on, Kim.
All right.
And then we also want to have some time for questions. So I'm going to try to speed it up here. So this is really interesting. So when you think about, there's a 1 million web page study out there that we evaluated, well, not we, but evaluated 1 million web pages, and 97% of those web pages have errors. So we talked about 90% of websites not being accessible, but 97% of all pages have errors. So things that you'll find, color contrast is a huge, huge issue, right? So a lot of these other violations that we see matter, but if they can't see or at least make up the backgrounds, because again, there's so many different visual impairments. Growing up for me, it was just, well, if they can't see, they can't see. But that's not necessarily, that's actually almost rarely the case. So again, there's multiple forms of impairments. And so color contrast is massively important. The images that you see, and you've all heard of image descriptions before, how important they are for SEO. May have just given that away a little bit, but those images need to have descriptions. So when someone is tabbing through the website, and if there's nothing described, they don't know where to go. There's at the tab front, tab back. They don't know where they are. They don't know what they're reading. They don't have any understanding of or perception of what's happening on the page. Not optimal, right? Forms not clearly labeled, right? So when you think about if you're trying to do a conversion, if someone's trying to inquire about a degree, or they're trying to make a purchase or set up an online banking account, or possibly touch base with a realtor for a home, And if the forms are not labeled clearly, they don't know where the text is going. On top of it, if it's not labeled clearly and there's a validation tool behind the scenes, for example, for an email address, and they don't know where they are and they're typing in their first name or their phone number, it would actually become a major problem. And that would actually lock them out. They would not be able to move forward. So link purpose is very important. So where people are driving from the site. So we look at it every day. We click, click, click. With screen reader technology, it needs to be clear on where they're going. And so Abeler and other organizations like ours make that possible. And it's all about, again, this usability piece is, if there's one thing I think you take away from our discussion today, it's usability. Again, there's a lot of discrepancies out there about what that is. And traditionally, I've used to run some digital advertising agencies in my past, and everything was about usability, but it was about cited usability, right? The flow, the Z flow from left to right, right? Ultimately, usability is way more than just visual. And if individuals have to be able to get through your site, regardless, get through your site. If they can't get through it, then you've got a site that's not operable. And then page language is not defined either. So one of the things, Kim and I talk about this a lot. Kim, you want to talk a little bit about page language, because we just ran into this issue recently?
Sure. So the screen readers are actually pretty smart because they do a lot of deciphering for a page. And so as long as all of that information is in there, the screen reader can read just about anything that's on the page. But a lot of times the native language is not defined. And so if the web page is in English, and somebody's reading it in Spain, for example, then their Spanish screen reader would try to read English with a Spanish accent. So if it's not specifically defined what language this page is supposed to be reading in, then the screen reader just goes absolutely crazy and you can't understand it. And it's actually comical if you're not trying to figure out the information, but very frustrating if you're trying to get something done independently.
All right, thanks, Kim. I think we have another poll. These little polls are fun. Now, if you were paying attention, I may have given this away a little bit, but so how does accessibility help SEO? The answers, options are ranking benefits, reducing bounce rates, improving sales, and it is increasing site popularity and density among those. Now, I don't know the ignored by competition, but ultimately it's site popularity. I really like these little polls. I think I might have to do these in every presentation. They're really fun.
Make sure everybody's awake still.
Yeah, they're cool. They're very cool. Okay, this is good. So the answer to this one is actually all four. But I will give you all credit because the top three, the popularity piece, sometimes that's link popularity. So popularity is about scoring the site from a relevancy perspective. So that would make sense that some of you may not have gotten that one, but yes, you're all absolutely correct. Bounce rates, which we all know are a major problem in website, especially when individuals are leaving as soon as they arrive. Sales, obviously we talked about conversion rate increases. Again, if people are going there and they're not even getting through their site, they're not converting. So you have giving people the opportunity to convert. And then the text, again, everything that is written out from an accessibility perspective. And again, another point here I just want to bring up is, and accessibility can be attractive. And a lot of folks that we work with in all verticals, in all locations, have this perception that if they're accessible, their site will be unattractive. And we'll show you here in a little bit, but that is absolutely not the case. And it's very important because being from an agency background and leading brands across the globe and their entire creative experiences, I can tell you from firsthand that our clients today have not one individual has complained. Now there's one area that I would say that is we keep in track with is color contrast. And most of the time, if we find that issue, it can be related to background colors, font colors, styling, but at the same time, logos. And that is the only issue that I've come about in my time is logo usage. And oftentimes logos don't need to change for that. That's a decision that we make together. We work on partnerships together, but that is one area. So there are a lot of benefits outside of being inclusive, mitigating risk and opportunity for growth. But SEO is a huge deal for those of you on, you know, how important that is to ensure that your position and your brand is coming up in search engines. Kim?
All right. So then I guess the handoff's to me. I don't know, Lynn, if you want to jump in and talk a little bit about why you came to Abeler or anything. I can kind of just start that. Is that something?
I would love to share that. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
So there are two reasons, and I think they're both really important, right? And I think you've spoken to both of them. One is that as we are part of Penn State, and Penn State has a requirement to be accessible by all means that can be measured, we were required then as an entity responsible to them to make sure that our website was compliant with that incredible list of requirements that was difficult to read in a document that has a title with like 1.4.6.8, right? All those kind of things. And frankly, to me, that was really difficult for me to even comprehend. So I was looking for someone to give me some advice on how do I make sure that I'm compliant with all of these rules that really don't seem to read like English. Maybe I'm a bit just unable to be able to do that. The flip side, though, is that we are a business speaking to marketers, and we're marketers speaking to marketers. And if we're speaking the language of marketing, the first language we should be speaking is something that is able to be seen and heard by our customers, because clearly they're not going to see and hear us if we're not talking to them in their own way of receiving that information. That is, we have to be completely accessible, or we have missed the mark as marketers, period. End of story, right? So on top of the requirement that we had to meet in terms of making sure that we didn't have anything that would be a violation, we absolutely should own up to and want to be accessible. So I met y'all, so I don't remember exactly how that happened, but I ran into you somehow. We started talking about this and I said, oh my gosh, finally someone who can translate those requirements into something that's meaningful for my web team, right? And that was good. But then you opened my eyes to like all of the ways that people might interact with my website that I did not know about, including the fact that there are readers that read sites to people, and I didn't know about it. So we basically gave you full access to the site and let you run around it and find everything that was wrong. And you gave us a beautiful list, and I'll let you talk about that part. And then we gave it to our team, who did not have a problem with everything you gave them, correcting all of those. And if we only knew about it, we wouldn't have made them in the first place. It would have been the cost of just building the site would have just been the same number, right? It wouldn't have cost anything we'd done at the beginning. Fixing, yes, has time associated with it, but we wouldn't have had to, because most of those were simply choices that we could have made better at the beginning that we didn't choose to do. So I'll give it back to you now, and you can tell them what you found and how you helped us fix it.
Great intro. So I just wanted to start off, first of all, and kind of talk to the point where Mike made about how your appearance of your website doesn't need to change. So starting off, the ISBM website had visually splendid images. It had predictable patterns, which is great. So a lot of this stuff is already built in as part of user experience, just regular user experience. And then it also had dynamic content. So what we found, so we do a kind of a combination approach where we use automated technology, and we also use the analysts who use adaptive technology in their everyday life. So the automated technology is great, and it's a good first start. We find that it finds about 25 to 40% of the accessibility issues. And I think this goes back to Mike's point where it can be completely accessible, but completely unusable. So you can pass these, you can kind of trick these automated technology tests and make them think that you're doing fine. But when people actually come to your site and try to place an order, that's really where the important part comes out. So the automated is great. You know, I kind of think of it as the reminders. So sometimes you're just really busy. You're trying to get the website done, or you're trying to get this resource done, and you just don't want to deal with it anymore. And you forget to do something for accessibility wise. The automated tests are great for that. But the human-centric approach that we use, we have people just comb through the website and use it with a screen reader, which is a technology that will read everything that is on the screen. We have people go through who use keyboard only, who use Zoom technology that makes the print a lot bigger on the screen. And we were able to find 32 additional issues, and some of them were parts of the website were inaccessible by keyboard. So if I was tabbing around using a keyboard, there were parts of the website that I couldn't access. So I wasn't able to place an order here. I wasn't able to submit the search or the contact form. And so those are things that the ISBM team were really excited to get fixed. Forms without labels. So we had, as you tabbed through, it was basically just telling me there were a bunch of empty text boxes instead of telling me what the text boxes required, like first name, last name, email. So that's actually a really easy fix and really makes a big difference on how to fill out forms. There were also kind of just inconsistent images all over the site. So some of them had alternative text, some of them didn't, some of them didn't need it. Images are kind of tricky when it gets to accessibility. There are different types and you handle them differently, but all of them should have a clear description and be described in a way that you've intended. So if you see that picture there on the right-hand side of the screen, it is a screenshot of the ISBM website. It shows a gentleman with his arms crossed smiling, and then it has some text about as a corporate member. So basically benefits on being a member. So in terms of images, that gentleman, and this is always up to the web developer, what is intended with sharing this image. Some would argue that this is just a decorative image, you know, kind of a smiling person gives you a good feeling about the site, but some might argue that it's really important. So maybe if this was a dentist office website, we would definitely want a ton of people with pearly white teeth, smiling, looking great. And I'd want to hear about them if I was a screen reader user, but maybe not so much on the ISBM website, because I don't need to know how many business professionals are smiling at me. But it's up to you. It just needs to be coded appropriately and how you've intended it. And then we also found some confusing page structure. So the biggest one on that is that screen readers, like I said, they're kind of tricky and they kind of try to outsmart web pages. They can navigate by different sections of the page. They can navigate by link. They can navigate by headings. And so if you don't have your structure completely, like think of it, if you know, transport yourself back to school days when you had to take notes and you had to keep them organized. You know, my kids now get to bring notes to their test, which I think is totally crazy, but having organized notes and being able to see your headings and where things fit and where they nest is really important. And then the same goes for websites. And so we gave ISBM quite a comprehensive report. I think this was the part where Lynn's eyes were opened. And it just went row by row, each issue, and it gave her a description of the issue, why it's important, and how to fix it. And so she gave it to her development team, and they just went to work. So we had a quick discussion on, you know, next steps, and I gave them, you know, the quick and dirty. So if you want to improve accessibility with minimal effort, focus your efforts here first. And so with accessibility, like Lynn said, it can kind of feel overwhelming and like you're speaking another language. And so we really try to break things down into little pieces or into comprehensible, you know, just it gets overwhelming. And so we start small, and then, you know, it's kind of like the snowball effect. Once you do little changes here, it turns fun. And I guess accessibility is fun for me, hopefully for some others. But the more you do it, the more you really just get into it and think it's fun. And then it ends up improving other parts that you never even intended. So we said, okay, we'll fix the color contrast issues, and some of your links need more descriptive names. Work on your heading structure. There were a couple of lists on the page. So what a screen reader will do when it comes to a list, like I have here on this screen, is it will announce how many bullet points that this list has. So somebody with a screen reader will know how long it's going to take them to get through this list, or they'll also know that all of these list items are associated with this heading. So the easy ways to improve the accessibility. So it's really helpful to have lists marked up properly. And then providing appropriate descriptions for images and labels for the form fields, and then provide a clear focus indicator. And this one always gets people because it doesn't make sense to mouse users, myself included, before I knew a lot about web accessibility, because it's really obvious when you're using a mouse, you just put your mouse on whatever you want to click and you click it. But if you're using a keyboard, you use the tab key to navigate through the page. And if there's no focus indicator, like a box, or I mean, the equivalent of the mouse arrow for each thing that's active, it's impossible to know what it is you're activating as you're going through the website. I'm going to go take a quick break here, and I'm going to take you over to the ISBM website. And let me know if you are not seeing the ISBM website. Okay, I'll take that as a yes.
Yep,
So,
you're good.
Oh, awesome. Okay, and so here's the ISBM website. I want to point out something really cool here. I noticed when Mike was talking, if you notice the first shot here of the ISBM homepage, there is an arrow and those dots along the bottom here. But now after the fix, they're white and they're so much easier to see. So they really pop out and they really call my attention and make it easy to see. So that was one fix that really jumped out at me when I looked at everything you guys had done to remediate. Let me go ahead and I will show you a keyboard user's experience. So I am in the URL and I'm just going to hit the tab key. Notice right about in the middle of the very top of the page in the gray bar, once I tab through, you're going to see something appear. And this is the magic of accessibility, is a lot of it's behind the scenes, but it makes a big difference to the end user. So I'm going to go ahead and tab into the page, and then I'm going to tab again. And it gives me a skip to main content link. So that was invisible. It's invisible to mouse users because mouse users can just drag and they can search wherever they want. But for somebody using a keyboard, the skip to main content is fabulous, because if you see across the top here, we've got multiple links and menus. And if you're looking at a website that has a complicated menu, where if you hover over membership, for example, you'll see 18 other links. A keyboard user would actually have to tab through all of those if this skip to main content link wasn't here. So this is a fabulous addition to the ISBM website. I'm going to go ahead and tab again, and I'm going to get to the menu here. And if you see that white border around the membership in the menu, that is what I'm talking about when I talk about focus indicator. So I know exactly if I hit enter right now, I'm going to go to the curriculum page. And so when we first met the ISBM website, it didn't have these cool little white boxes, and I was tabbing through and I had no idea where I was on the page. So with that improvement, we've got way more usable. I can skip the menu if I want to, and just get straight to the main content. So it would just start reading down here at the world's only B2B think tank area. So it's really great. Some great improvements there. Okay, so let's see if I can get this to start reading where I want it to. Nope. Sorry, guys, have to fast forward through. Okay, so after remediation, I've kind of went into this a little bit, but some of the others, so the main things that they fixed were discernible links. So if you see the two pictures here, the top one is the before image, and it shows a learn more button, a heading that says our members say, and then a block quote where somebody's giving a quote about how great ISBM is, and then you've got your left and right arrow for previous and next slide. So there are learn more links. And so also what a screen reader can do is it can list out all of the links on the page. So when it does that, it takes out a little bit of the context. And so if there are multiple learn more links on a page and they go to different destinations, so maybe one's learn more about membership and the other is learn more about curriculum, it looks the same to a screen reader. So what they've done is put kind of behind the scenes, really cool Batman sort of stuff. And so it'll say, learn more about membership or learn more about, and so the button looks exactly the same, But screen reader users have access to way more information because of that little tweak that they did to the website. They also fixed the color contrast. So you'll notice the button went from being white text on a yellow background to dark blue text on a yellow background. Heading structure. So there was in the after picture, this second marketing director, industrial equipment manufacturer, was actually marked up as a heading. And it was done so for styling reasons, but it really kind of makes the structure of the page confusing. So by removing that, then it's obvious that this is the member testimonials area, and this is what's in that section. So really headings should be reserved for introducing new sections of the page and not for styling reasons. And then they also fixed the image descriptions. And as a result, on their first pass, they were able to fix over 55% of the issues that we mentioned. So really a great start down the accessibility path. It is an open discussion. So after this talk, I'm going to go back with Lynn's development team and say, this was great, but this needs to be like this, or, and it just goes back and forth. And the whole while, the development team's learning a ton about accessibility. So the ultimate goal is to learn about accessibility so that you can avoid a lot of these issues in the future. And because it was so much fun, Lynn and I kind of decided that we would quickly scan some of the ISBM member websites and see. Basically, is kind of a funny one to see how it compares to the Million web page study. If you think about included in the Million web page study, you've got your targets, your gigantic brands that have entire accessibility teams. They're still on that list. So when you see that 100% of web pages from the member websites, don't despair. It's a really difficult thing to get to zero, but we wanted to run the test. So what we found, a lot of the member websites struggle with the color contrast, the same amount struggle with headings, and some with links and buttons. Fewer struggle with images, and just under half of them had keyboard accessibility issues. And that really is the end. It feels weird not to have questions rolling in. So should we switch over to questions?
Sure, that's great. I have a couple. And I just want to again thank you guys and make a comment. As I told you, we found each other because I was looking for someone that could help me ensure that I had this, and I just couldn't find any organizations, right? We tend to partner up, ISBM does, with other entities when we know that they have capabilities that we can't find for our members anywhere else. And I hadn't found anyone that could do this for me in a way that made sense and also didn't cost me $1 million, right? Or start all over with your website kind of thing. And so I have to just speak again to the fact that you guys gave us, a product that I could pass on to my web team. And you are correct. My web team has had their eyes opened as well. Now, these are guys that do this all day long, every day. And that part of it is the part that's also interesting to me, because that tells me that almost every agency that's helping build websites for people probably has folks that are just trained like my folks are, and they don't know this detail. And if they knew it from the beginning, because there was a lot of forehead slapping when they saw some of it, it's like, oh, well, we could have just done that from the beginning. Yes, almost everything on this list, you could have just done this from the beginning when you built the site, but we didn't, right? And part of it might just be the word accessibility in terms of the language used to make things accessible. Because I will tell you again that document that says this is how you must do it was not written with English in mind, as far as I can tell.
No, they have whole year-long courses on just understanding pieces of it. So,
and I've been part of those where they've had to make this kind of controlling document for things, and so they're written by committee. Which, of course, when you read it, it's written by committee. It's really not clear, and asking for clarity doesn't get you any. But okay, so I want to continue singing the praises that we finally found someone who could help us with this, and that's you guys, right? And that I think you've given a lot of the hints right here, but it's really helps to have someone just thoroughly run through it. And I can't speak enough to say that we as marketers should not be worried about whether we're compliant. We should be worried about whether communicating to everybody equally well as you know, as now we weren't, obviously we've been missing people. So we did have a couple questions. So one was, okay, so I have this site that I'm managing and I want to make these changes. How long does that take?
That is an individual. It's based on the website. It's based on how big the changes are, how you've coded your website. So it's kind of, it depends on it. It'll depend. And that's probably the best answer I can give you. You know, for some of these issues, like headings, if you think about the way you've structured your page, you'll have to go in and fix all of the heading one by one. But in terms of like color contrast, you can just go to the CSS, the cascading style sheet. And sorry if that's obvious to everyone on the call. I just don't want to use acronyms, and just change it once and it's fixed site-wide. So it really depends on the issue, how your site's coded, and really how pervasive the issue is.
And the question might have been, how long does it take for you guys? So once you have a conversation with Abeler, how long does it take for Abeler to come back and say, here's all your issues? I'm sure that's also depends on how big your site is, but do you
Exactly.
have a rule of thumb for that?
Yeah, so we'll, you know, when we talk to people, we will find out how many unique templates they have. And so what we're really looking there is trying to find the most complicated version of every type, to every style that they have on their web page or website. And then we'll go ahead and comb through them. We do it page by page. We try to keep that number low just because it really is a time-consuming process for us. Each page takes anywhere from 2 to 5 hours to go through and track all of the issues. So it is a very, you know, and that is definitely why we just try to minimize the number of templates that we're looking at any given time.
And another question, do you work with any specific agencies that would already be prepared to do this from the start, or are you really mostly in the remediation phase?
You mean web agencies?
Yeah, right.
Mike, can you give the answer to that? We do have partners. Our big thing about Abeler is that we're just trying to cast our net as big as possible. I'll let you go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find the screen. Yes, we do. We have a program called the Abeler Ally Program. And to Kim's point, it's, you know, our goal is to help create an accessible world by 2025, along with some other partners in the industry. So yes, we do have a stable of partners that we have helped train and get educated and help their developers get ready for these types of remediation projects. We have a pretty decent amount, probably 5 or 6 that we trust very much for different sizes of businesses. And we have an ally program today. And the purpose of that is to create a joint sort of venture to help other organizations ensure that their clients, their customers, partners are accessible as well. And we have about 30 agency partners in there that are supporting the Abeler mission to bring accessibility, inclusivity to the masses. So yes, the answer is yes, we can, and we can help you. We also, and Lynn keeps mentioning the marketing piece. You know, I've spent many years leading agencies, and we also help support consulting there too. So when we talk about creativity and visual experiences, we can help support that environment for you as well.
That's great. I think that many of our member companies do have agencies that they work with directly. So we don't have to name them here, and that's fine. But I think if they could reach out to you, they could also be, that could be helpful for them. So that's great. And
it could. And Lynn, one more thing, sorry to interrupt, is that we do work well, many of our clients, and we typically don't do the remediation for many reasons, because just because most of our partners have development teams in-house and partners that help with their website management, but we play very well with everyone. And during the process of working with these individuals and companies, there's a lot of training opportunities. So when you go through the process, and Lynn, you know, your team has learned a lot about this. And so it's great education to work with other partners, whether an ally or not, just to help. It's just spreading the mission and sharing the love, right?
Yep. We hear a lot. I'll never see a website the same again from development teams, because it didn't occur to them before, but now they can't unsee it. And it's just, you know, it just makes sense once they see it.
And that's a beautiful thing. Exactly. Right. That you don't have to revisit this. You don't have to make the same mistakes again. And And it doesn't really matter. I would challenge anybody to look at the before and after of our website and actually see the differences. If you're visually able, right? Like from my perspective, there was almost nothing that looks different on that site at all. But
But from a screen reader, yep.
Mine, oh my gosh, right? It's
Yes.
night and day. And that is the
Absolutely.
point that one has to feel good about. If you're, again, on the marketing mission, I can't be excluding people to communicate with. I need to communicate with everyone. That's wonderful. Yeah. Well, that's the end of my questions. And I'm glad we've left on the screen. I want to invite everybody to reach out to you directly. And if you, for some reason, can't find that, of course, you can reach out to me at ISBM and I'll redirect you. If you've signed up for this webinar, you'll be getting a link to the recording at some point when Zoom has finalized it. And you can also find that recording back on our site at isbm.com. It will also be shared with the Abeler folks, so they may have it too. So when you can't remember what you found, where you found it, you can find us and we'll help you. All right, thanks a lot so much. I really, really appreciate it, guys. This is a great presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Yep, absolute pleasure.
And Lynn, it was a pleasure to work with you and the team. We've had a great time, and obviously I've learned a ton from you as well. So we're grateful for the partnership and you introducing us to some folks and to provide some education around the importance of this issue. So thank you all very much for being part of this. We're grateful for your time today. If you have any questions, just feel free to hang out with us, and or we'll talk soon. Either way, thank you guys.
Thanks. Okay, Lori, you can